Hi guys, welcome back to another video, or your first video here, I don't know. Welcome if you're new here, welcome either way. This is going to be my autumn into winter book unhaul. I haven't done one for a couple of months, so there's a number of books that I want to talk about today. And I'll probably do one more unhaul by the end of the year. Probably a Christmas unhaul, especially if I'm then going back through my shelves, having like a declutter at the end of the year. But yeah, I'm getting rid of these books for a number of reasons, and I'll put them into categories to make it easier. So this pile of books are books that I'm getting rid of because I tried either the first book in the series that I have multiple, or I tried reading said book and it didn't work for me. I don't want to own it anymore. So the first in that category is I have a number of books, I'll start off with comics so that if you're not actually interested in comics, just skip ahead. So I have volumes 14, 16, 17 and 18 of Fushigi Yugi, and this is a manga series that I'd wanted to read just because I'd heard of it. I saw these probably in the charity shop somewhere. I might have got them off Facebook Marketplace a little while ago in that sort of big order I made my first year on BookTube, but I read or started reading the first book and this really didn't work for me. It's been a little while since I did start that first book, but I think that the characterization really didn't work, or the main character was written very young or fell into a lot of tropes. Again, because it's been a while, I cannot remember, but yep, that's 4 books off my shelves. Next up we have a comic. So this isn't book number 1, but this is book number 5 of the omnibus editions of Betrayal Knows My Name. I picked this up mainly because I heard it was gay. It was released by the company June Publishing. Where is the... Oh no, it wasn't. Okay, it seems that they just have very similar covers. So I have and continue to have hear good things about this series. I've heard it is very, very good. I think it fits into that slightly dark nature that I really tend to gravitate towards in comics. However, I picked this up because of the fact that I heard that it was LGBT, and something that I looked at when looking into reviews and looking more at the book itself, it was never intended to be that, or at least any hint of LGBT representation was just put in there to give the readers hope that these characters would end up together. There's a situation where we have a romantic couple who one of them is then reincarnated as the opposite gender, so there is that sort of play off there. But yeah, I think that even with how many good things I've heard about this series, because of the fact that I'd gone into it with those expectations, I don't think I was ever going to enjoy it to its fullest extent, and that is definitely something that's on me and not on the comic itself. So, bye-bye. The next one is Let Die, volume 7. So this, I believe, is a manhwa rather than a manga, so released in Korea rather than Japan. So this is volume 7. I decided to try and find volume 1 online, give it a try to see if I wanted to actually continue to buy the rest of the books in the series. So this is a slightly older gay manga that managed to force its way through the cracks in order to be actually published at a time where these sorts of things were very rarely deemed acceptable. And I think because of that, there were just certain things that didn't make sense, or I think it had to be darker and more serious in order to make it past the publishing, but I think that it did a disservice to the characters. I think that the scenes jumped too quickly onto the next scene without fully establishing what exactly was going on or what exactly was the context of it. I wish there'd been a bit more explanation, and I think that having that could have made the behaviours of the characters seem a lot more understandable or realistic. But I'm glad this was able to exist for the people who needed that representation at the time. I'm just glad that we have better LGBT comics out now than something like this. Next we have Ship It by Britta Lundin. So this one I picked up because it fit the bar of it was gay, and I used this as a marker of, do I want to pick up convention fandom type stories anymore? And I really don't think they're for me, despite the fact that I have been in many fandoms. When I tend to enjoy something, I tend to enjoy it very, very strongly. I feel a very strong connection with the hobbies that I have, hence why I like books. Therefore, I own many books. I have a book channel. I read hundreds of books in a year. But I think that I've never been involved with a fandom to the extent that I know a lot of people, one, have, or two, a lot of people that we're following in these books have. And I think that the main appeal of that is for people to feel seen and feel represented, and not be brushed off as having that intense interest being seen as silly or over dramatic. And I think it's wonderful that these books exist, but I don't feel that nostalgia, and I think that a lot of them tend to come off a lot younger than the average book for that age range. So I think that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for books that are like this. So any sort of convention-based LGBT books that would have been going onto my radar, I think I'm going to take them off. If you know of anything on my Goodreads list that I should be taking off because of that element, do please let me know. Next we have a little book called Being an Ally, by a number of authors. So this is a little book that I've seen in coffee shops a lot, where it's very clean, it's very nicely sort of designed, and it is a series of essays about allyship and being an ally. And I think that I'm really glad that this resource exists, but in trying to read it, one, there was no audiobook available, which I think would have made it easier for me, and two, it didn't go into a lot of depth into each of the essay topics, and because of that it didn't really give me anything, given the fact that I've done a lot of research already into this area. So I think this could really work for someone, just not for me. And finally, for this mini section, we have a book by Paul O'Grady, and that's At My Mother's Knee and Other Low Joints. So I love Paul O'Grady. I love his comedy. I loved his drag, and I was very sad to see that he'd passed away. And so my book club decided to read one of his autobiographies. He's had a number, as our book club book, and so we decided on this one being the first in the series of autobiographies. First of all, my first issue was that this doesn't have an audiobook. I get on best with biographies and autobiographies when they are narrated, and two, when they are narrated by the author. I think that having his very dry wit reading this book to me, I feel like I could have enjoyed it a lot more. Also, I think that it very much fell into, here's a bunch of stories about my childhood, rather than having a clear narrative or something to say like some other memoirs that might be considered similar to this do. And also I think that I wanted to hear more about his drag and his inspiration for Lily Savage, and so there are a couple of other autobiographies from him that I do still own. I believe they are up there, and so I do still want to read them. I think this one just wasn't going to be for me. The second category is books that I have or am going to be repurchasing with a different edition. And the first is the fact that I have two books in the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Lee Bardugo. I have Shadow and Bone, and I have Siege and Storm, which I believe are books 1 and 2. This series has gotten a lot of hype recently. It's had a TV series. There has been expansion into the universe. There's a short story collection called Language of Thorns. There is another short story collection, The Secret Lives of Saints or something like that. And then there are other series and duologies and trilogies that exist in the same world, but are at completely different times and following completely different people. So I recently read this trilogy mainly to be able to go further, and it was something I really enjoyed, but I definitely feel like later books in the series could really be for me. Dust is irritating my nose. And Owlcrate decided to release a special edition box of this series re-released. I was holding on to these because I really didn't like their old new covers, so I was trying to collect them in this edition because I think they're really beautiful. I also think they really fit the series, but when I saw that Owlcrate edition, I decided to splash out and buy those. So look forward to an unboxing of that on my channel. But for now, these two are gone. And then the final category are books that I have read, and for whatever reason I've decided that I don't want them on my shelves anymore. First of all, we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I had read The Hobbit as a child, or had it read to me by my dad, and really loved it, and so reread that in order to read this trilogy so that I could go on to watch the films, because I have never watched the films. I've not allowed myself to watch the films until I read the books, and I can see what they did for fantasy. I can see why they are classics. However, for me, as a modern fantasy reader, they didn't give me the same enjoyment that I get from a lot of the modern fantasy. So I respect their place, but I think that someone else could really, really love these, so I'm going to pass these along. Next, we have quite a recent read, and that is The Cat Prince and Other Poems by Michael Pedersen. And this is a short poetry collection that I picked up on a whim. I saw the cover and I heard vaguely that it was gay, although it's not very explicit in here. Couple of hints maybe, but to be honest, a lot of this went over my head. I was very confused by most of it, and I think that's definitely a me problem, not a book problem. I could see this really working for people, but I didn't want it on my shelves. Next, we have a little comic that I bought at a local craft fair stall thing, and that is My Dad is Better Than Your Dad by Claire Paul. This is a little comic following these 4 cactus children discussing their parents, really. I will talk about this more in my wrap-up. It didn't quite make sense in terms of the actual wording of the story, but it was really cute, and I'm glad that I got to support a local artist. In that same vein, we have Maudie and the Magnificent Sky by Mary Dunn. So this is a short children's book written by a local photographer artist, and each of the illustrations they created using their photography. It follows a girl trying to find where the sun's gone and the clouds that sort of take her on a journey. I think this was really good. The reason why I'm getting rid of it is because I think I'm going to pass it on to either kids in my life, kids in my friends' lives, who I think could actually like and benefit from a story like this. Next, I have 2 books that I read when I was younger and I liked at the time, so I have the copies of, but I don't really need them anymore, don't want them on my shelves. The first being Spellfall by Catherine Roberts. This one I pretty much just got back from lending it to my sister years and years and years ago now, and my sister's reading taste has changed, and so have I. I really enjoyed this. I think this is a very fast-paced exciting fantasy novel for probably lower young adult age, and it was really enjoyable, just not for me anymore. The next being a classic, and that is Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore. I picked this one up because it is set where a couple of my family are from, and that's pretty much the only reason why I read it. And I was keeping it for that reason, despite the fact that I really didn't like the way that men and women were described in this book. It's about a real person who, it's kind of like the poor man falling for the rich woman trope, and it follows a group of, like, how did it describe it? Something like bandits that were living in England that the UK monarchy were having trouble getting rid of, and the sort of important woman that they'd kidnapped, or something or other, I can't remember, but yeah, bye. And finally, I have the Drag Dictionary by Alba de Zante and Roberto Garcia. And so this, I think, was very good. I think that the art is excellent, and it is kind of what it says on the tin. It goes through a bunch of phrases and words used in drag culture that someone might not know the origin of, or might not know the meaning of if they're just getting into drag. I think this is a great resource for someone who maybe is starting to get into that culture. I also think that it did a good job at not being like white centric for its explanations and for the words that they found, but it didn't do a lot for me because I've already done a lot of research into drag culture. So I will be passing this along because I'm sure that someone else would really love this. And there you have it. Those are all the books that I got rid of over August and winter. Do let me know about a book that you've decided to get rid of, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!